4 nations banned, 75 countries shut out. Europe threatening to walk away. This is the 2026 World Cup, and it's falling apart before a single ball is kicked. I'm looking at something that should be impossible. The biggest sporting event on the planet 5 months out, and governments are openly discussing whether to boycott. Not fans, governments. We're not talking about minor players here. Germany, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, countries that have sent teams to every World Cup for decades, are now asking if they should even show up. And here's what nobody's talking about. This didn't start with a policy announcement or a diplomatic cable. It started with a trophy, a golden trophy handed to one man at the Kennedy Center in Washington. While the world watched the World Cup draw on December 5th, reports are now confirming that moment, that ceremony, set off a chain reaction nobody saw coming. But wait, it gets worse. Because while that trophy was being presented, while officials were celebrating what was supposed to be the biggest World Cup in history, behind the scenes, the State Department was already drafting documents that would bar millions of fans from entering the United States. Documents that would turn qualification into a cruel joke for 4 national teams. Documents that would make this tournament the most politically divisive sporting event in modern history. Let me show you how deep this goes. The tournament was awarded to the United States, Canada, and Mexico in 2018. 8 years of preparation, billions in infrastructure, stadiums ready, 78 matches scheduled on American soil, including the final in New Jersey. Everything was set. Everything was perfect. And then January happened on January 14th. Just weeks ago, Washington announced it was suspending immigrant visa processing from 75 countries indefinitely. 8 of those countries have qualified teams: Brazil, Colombia, Egypt, Ghana, Jordan, Morocco, Tunisia, Uruguay. Fans who had already bought tickets, booked flights, planned trips around their teams, suddenly faced a wall. Official statements claimed tourist visas weren't affected, but families spending thousands of dollars aren't taking chances with vague assurances. Now, what I'm about to show you changes the whole picture. This isn't just about visa paperwork. 4 nations face complete travel bans. Iran, the first team to qualify through Asian competition, can't send supporters to Seattle, New York, or anywhere in the United States. Their officials already boycotted the World Cup draw in Miami after being denied entry. Think about that. A qualified team unable to attend the ceremony where their matches were scheduled because the host country wouldn't let them in. But here's where it gets complicated. Haiti earned their spot for the first time in over 50 years. Generations waited for this. Their entire football history led to this moment. And every single one of their group stage matches is scheduled in the United States. Boston on June 13th against Scotland. 2 more on American soil. Their fans, their families, the people who believed when nobody else did. They're watching from outside. Empty seats where celebration should be. The footage we're seeing from Port-au-Prince shows fans who know they'll never make it. The travel ban isn't temporary, it's indefinite. Senegal African champions qualified for their 3rd World Cup. Their opener against France at Matife Stadium in New Jersey on June 16th is one of the tournament's biggest matches. Thousands of supporters bought tickets months ago. They have match tickets. They have hotel reservations. They don't have visa clarity. Partial restrictions mean applications sit unanswered while departure dates approach. One supporter told reporters that attending the World Cup felt non-negotiable. The State Department had a different view. Wait, it gets worse. Ivory Coast, another African power, faces the same uncertainty. Their matches against Ecuador, Germany, and Colombia span multiple cities. Fans are being told to hope diplomatic relations improve by June. That's not a travel plan. That's a gamble. And families aren't gambling with their savings on maybe. This is the part that kept me up last night. FIFA tried to project confidence. They unveiled something called the FIFA Pass in November, promising priority visa appointments for fans with match tickets. They deployed 400 additional consular officers worldwide to handle demand. They released data showing 500 million ticket requests from all 201 member associations, record-breaking numbers, 15 million applications per day during a 33-day window. But buried in their press release was a disclaimer. Possession of a match ticket does not guarantee entry to the United States, Canada, or Mexico. Read that again. You can buy the ticket, you can book the flight, you can plan the trip, and you still might not get in. That's not hosting a World Cup. That's running a geopolitical lottery where fans are betting thousands on favorable diplomatic timing. And then this happened. While all of this was unfolding, while millions of fans were navigating visa uncertainty and travel restrictions, that trophy I mentioned earlier, it was being called the FIFA Peace Prize. The inaugural FIFA Peace Prize, created specifically for this moment, presented to the very administration implementing the policies that were tearing the tournament apart. The same week, officials were expanding ban lists and suspending visa processing. FIFA's president stood on stage praising leadership and cooperation. Here's what nobody's talking about. That ceremony wasn't just awkward. It was the moment when European officials started making calls, when federation presidents started asking lawyers about boycott precedents when the celebration became a crisis. I'm curious what you think about this, but first you need to see what happened next, because Europe didn't just complain, they organized. On January 19th, a German politician named Jürgen Hart said something that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Germany, 4-time World Cup champion, could boycott the tournament as a last resort. Not as a maybe, not as a distant possibility, as a last resort. Those were his exact words. Hart isn't some fringe voice. He's the foreign policy spokesperson for the Christian Democratic Union. He's an advisor to the Chancellor. When he speaks, Berlin listens. And what he said was this: if the United States pursues control of Greenland, if threats of tariffs against European nations continue, if military options remain on the table, then Germany needs to consider not participating. But that's not even the real story. The real story is what happened after he said it. Polling was conducted immediately. 47% of Germans supported a boycott if Washington moved on Greenland. 47%. That's nearly half the country willing to sacrifice watching their national team compete. Only 35% opposed. Think about what that means. One of football's most passionate nations ready to walk away from the sport's biggest stage. Now here's where it gets interesting. Germany's sports minister didn't endorse the boycott, but she also didn't shut it down. She deferred to the German Football Federation and FIFA. That silence, that's telling. Berlin was taking Washington's posture seriously. This wasn't performative outrage. This was contingency planning. And then Oki Gutlich entered the conversation. Gutlich is a vice president of the German Football Federation. He's also president of St. Paul, a Bundesliga club. He gave an interview, and what he said made headlines across Europe. The time has come to seriously consider and discuss a boycott. Not someday, not if things escalate. Now he compared the current situation to the Olympic boycott of the 1980s. The United States led a boycott of the Moscow Olympics after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Gutlich argued that the potential threat today is greater than it was then. Those weren't casual words. He was drawing a direct line between Cold War tensions and what's happening right now. But here's what nobody's talking about. Gutlich addressed the obvious criticism. What about the players? He didn't dodge it. He said, "The life of a professional player is not worth more than the lives of countless people in regions who are being attacked or threatened by the World Cup host." That's a statement. That's saying there are principles bigger than sport. Germany wasn't alone. In the Netherlands, over 150,000 people signed a petition calling on their national team to boycott. 150,000 signatures in a country of 17 million. The petition cited aggressive military intervention as the reason. And then this happened in the United Kingdom. 23 members of Parliament signed a motion, not a suggestion, a formal parliamentary motion. Labour MPs, Liberal Democrats, Green Party, Plaid Cymru, 4 different parties united in one position. They called on international sporting bodies to consider expelling the United States from major competitions, not suspending, expelling. The language was striking. They argued that major sporting events should not be used to legitimize violations of international law by powerful states. They cited military actions in Venezuela and Nigeria. They mentioned threats involving Greenland, Mexico, Colombia, and Iran. The motion specifically highlighted what they called the kidnapping of President Nicolas Maduro, the fact that elected officials in the United Kingdom, America's closest ally, formally proposed such a measure that marks a rupture. Wait, it gets worse. Former FIFA president Sepp Blatter joined the calls. Now Blatter left office under a corruption cloud, but he still carries weight in global football circles. And he didn't hedge. He backed a proposed fan boycott, supporting comments from a Swiss lawyer who told fans to stay away from the United States. The lawyer's exact words were blunt. If you consider everything happening, there's only one piece of advice. Stay away. You'll see it better on television anyway. And if fans don't please officials upon arrival, expect to be put on the next flight home if they're lucky. That last part is what concerns people. It's not just about getting visas. It's about what happens once you're there. The administration hasn't ruled out immigration enforcement actions at World Cup matches. Officials haven't denied it. For Haitian fans, whose temporary protected status expires on February 3rd, attending a match could mean arrest. These are people who've lived in the United States for years, but their protection ends in February, and the tournament starts in June. Now, what I'm about to show you changes the whole picture. Canada and Mexico, the co-host, suddenly became critical. Each country hosts 13 of the 104 matches: Toronto, Vancouver, Mexico City. These cities transform from secondary venues into safe havens. Senegal's third group matches in Toronto. That match will proceed without visa complications. Fans blocked from entering the United States can attend there. Ivory Coast plays Germany in Toronto on June 18th. Thousands who can't cross into America will travel north instead. The economic impact that was supposed to fill American cities is being redistributed to Canadian venues. Mexico's situation is more complex. Despite being a co-host, it remains under pressure from Washington. Threats tied to tariffs, threats about military action against drug cartels, but the matches there will still offer access that American venues don't. France's sports minister made a telling statement. She said there's currently no desire to boycott the tournament, but she didn't rule it out entirely. She emphasized keeping sports separate from politics, but that qualifier, "I am not prejudging what might happen," that leaves the door open. Germany's watching. The Netherlands is watching. The UK is watching. They're waiting to see what happens next. Does this change how you see the situation? Because I haven't even told you about the trophy yet. Let me take you back to December 5th, the World Cup draw, the Kennedy Center in Washington. This was supposed to be pure celebration. 48 teams learning their opponents, fans around the world tuning in to see the matchups. Instead, They watched something else entirely. They watched FIFA's president hand a newly created peace prize to a sitting political leader. And the moment it happened, the backlash began. The prize itself didn't exist until November. FIFA announced it with almost no warning. Some senior officials reportedly learned about it through media reports. There was no transparent selection process, no list of nominees, no panel of judges. Human rights organizations reached out to FIFA asking about the criteria, the methodology, how the decision was made. They received no substantive answers. The implication was clear. There was no process. There were no other candidates. This prize was created for one person. But here's what nobody's talking about. The timing wasn't random. The Nobel Peace Prize had been awarded the month before to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. That prize, the one that actually matters, went to someone else. FIFA created its own version and scheduled the presentation for maximum visibility. The World Cup draw gets global viewership, hundreds of millions watching. The stage couldn't have been bigger. When the moment arrived, FIFA's president described it as recognizing exceptional and extraordinary actions for peace. He praised efforts to bring people together to make the world safer. He presented a gold trophy, a gold medal, and a certificate. The response was brief. Winning this was described as one of the great honors. The irony was thick enough to cut, because less than 24 hours earlier, there had been a deadly airstrike in the Caribbean. Less than a month earlier, the expanded travel ban list was published. Less than a week later, visa processing for 75 countries would be suspended. The Peace Prize ceremony happened in the middle of the most restrictive immigration policies in recent memory. Now, here's where it gets complicated. FIFA has rules about political neutrality. Players get fined for displaying political messages. Federations face penalties for government interference. The organization has spent decades insisting football must remain separate from politics. And then it created a prize, gave it to a sitting head of state, and did it at a ceremony where that leader's policies were already dominating the conversation. Human rights groups filed a formal ethics complaint, arguing that awarding the prize to a political leader violated FIFA's duty of neutrality. The complaint went to FIFA's Ethics Committee. As of now, there's been no public response. But that's not even the real story. The real story is what this revealed about relationships. FIFA's president and the prize recipient have been close since the first presidential term. There are photos from the Oval Office, joint appearances in Egypt during ceasefire negotiations. An Instagram post before the inauguration calling the relationship an incredible honor. FIFA opened an office in a building bearing the recipient's name. A replica World Cup trophy has been displayed in the Oval Office since 2018, the year the hosting decision was announced. This wasn't just about one ceremony. This was about alignment. This was about ensuring the tournament had political protection. And when you understand that, everything else makes sense. Wait, it gets worse. South Africa's main opposition leader called on their football association to withdraw from the tournament. He drew parallels to apartheid, saying the current situation mirrors international law violations that once made South Africa a pariah. Those aren't casual comparisons. Apartheid led to Olympic boycott. The fact that someone is using that framework to describe what's happening now tells you how seriously this is being taken outside Western media. The scale of disruption keeps growing. Reports emerged that over 16,000 fans cancelled pre-booked tickets in mid-January. Videos of immigration enforcement confrontations spread online. An incident in Minneapolis, where enforcement actions turned deadly, went viral. People started asking if it was safe to travel to the United States for a football tournament, not because of crime, because of government policy. FIFA called an emergency meeting. They released statements about security guarantees. They emphasized that tourist visas were different from immigrant visas. They tried to reassure fans that having a match ticket meant something, but confidence was eroding. Here's what I'm about to tell you, and this is critical. The numbers behind the ban are staggering. The first proclamation came in June 2025. 19 countries faced restrictions. By December 16th, that list had doubled to 39 nations. Iran boycotted the draw entirely after visa denials for their delegation. You qualify for the World Cup, you earn your place through competition, and then you can't attend the ceremony where your matches are scheduled because the host country won't let your officials in. The exemptions tell their own story. Players and coaches can travel. Immediate family of athletes can travel, but fans cannot. FIFA wants the show to continue. They need the matches to happen, but they're willing to stage a World Cup in front of empty seats if that's what it takes. The sport can proceed. The business can continue. The supporters who make the atmosphere, who create the emotion, who are the reason football matters, they're optional. But that's not even what bothers me most. What bothers me is the precedent. If this works, if a World Cup can be held under these conditions, what message does that send? What happens the next time a host country imposes restrictions? Because they will. This isn't the last time. This is setting the template. And if we accept it now, we're accepting it permanently. Am I the only one concerned about this? The stadiums are ready. The infrastructure is in place. 11 American cities have spent years preparing. 78 matches scheduled across these venues. The final in New Jersey on July 19th. From a logistical standpoint, everything is perfect, but logistics aren't the problem anymore. The problem is that this tournament has become a test of whether the world's most popular game can survive being weaponized for political purposes. And based on what we're seeing, the answer might be no. This isn't just about travel restrictions or diplomatic tensions. This is about the fundamental relationship between sport and power. For decades, the Olympics and the World Cup operated on an understanding. Politics would always be present. Governments would always try to use these events. But there were limits. Host countries were expected to facilitate, not complicate, to welcome, not exclude. That understanding is breaking down in real time. When a host country bans qualified team supporters, when it creates uncertainty for fans from dozens of nations, when it forces them to choose between their passion and their safety, that's not hosting. That's holding the sport hostage. And the response we're seeing, the boycott discussions, the petition signatures, the parliamentary motions, that's about whether football can remain football when it's dragged into these conflicts. Now, what I'm about to show you is the part that changes everything. FIFA can't move the tournament, not with 5 months remaining. 500 million ticket requests are on record. Contracts are signed. Broadcast rights are sold. The infrastructure investment is irreversible. They're locked in, which means they have two choices. Hope the backlash fades and enough teams show up to make it legitimate, or watch as their showcase event becomes a cautionary tale. The countries that do participate will face questions. Why did you go when others stayed home? What message are you sending? Are you endorsing the policies or just ignoring them? Teams that would normally focus on tactics will spend press conferences defending their presence. Players who dreamed of representing their nations will be asked about immigration law and diplomatic relations. But here's what nobody's talking about. The economic impact is already shifting. Those 13 matches in Canada, they're going to draw crowds meant for American cities. Toronto and Vancouver will see an influx of European and African supporters who can't or won't cross into the United States. The money that was supposed to flow through Houston, New Jersey, Seattle, it's being redistributed north. Mexico's venues will see similar benefits. The co-hosts are becoming the primary hosts by default, and the fans who do travel to the United States will do so under a cloud of uncertainty that fundamentally changes the experience. Every interaction with authorities becomes potentially problematic. This isn't paranoia. This is based on actual enforcement actions that have already occurred. People are making rational calculations about risk, and many are deciding it's not worth it. The ticket cancellations tell the story. 16,000 confirmed as of mid-January. If that trend continues, if fear spreads, if more incidents make headlines, you could see empty seats at matches that should be packed. The atmosphere makes football what it is. The chants, the colours, the passion in the stands. That's essential. A World Cup without that energy is just exhibition matches with high stakes. Here's where this goes from here. We're 5 months out. Between now and June, every political decision, every enforcement action, every diplomatic incident will be viewed through the lens of this tournament. If tensions escalate, boycotts become more likely. If they de-escalate, if assurances are given, maybe this can be salvaged. But that requires change, and I'm not seeing evidence of appetite for change. Germany is waiting. The Netherlands is waiting. France is waiting. They're watching. They're pressure testing their own positions. Could we actually withdraw? What would that look like? These aren't hypothetical conversations anymore. These are real discussions happening at federation levels in government offices. The fact that we're even here discussing whether major nations will participate, that alone is historic. The precedent concerns me more than anything. If this succeeds, if attendance is strong enough, if the matches go ahead without major incident, then the lesson learned is clear. You can host a World Cup under restrictive conditions. You can ban fan bases. You can create uncertainty and fear, and the show will still go on. That becomes the new normal. But if it fails, if boycott happen, if stadiums sit half empty, if the tournament is remembered as the one that broke football's political neutrality, then we learn a different lesson. We learn that there are limits. We learn that sport can push back. I don't know which version we're going to see, but I know we're closer to finding out than anyone wants to admit. The countdown is on. June 11th, 145 days. Either this becomes the greatest World Cup ever staged, or it becomes the cautionary tale that reshapes how global sport and national politics intersect. One thing's for certain. By the time that final whistle blows in New Jersey on July 19th, we'll know whether the World Cup is bigger than the countries that host it, or whether it's just another tool in the geopolitical toolbox. Where do you think this goes from here? Because I genuinely don't know, and that uncertainty 5 months before the biggest sporting event on the planet, that might be the most concerning thing of